Do you think the Biden runoff is a good thing? Like, are you happy that those are the best people?
No, of course not. It should not be this way. Everyone knows that.
Okay.
Everyone knows that. It doesn't even matter who you support to know that we're not supposed to be doing this with, an 80-year-old guy with dementia and a 78-year-old guy who, regardless of what you think of the results of the last election, says that the election was stolen. So if he loses this next time,
right,
even if he loses legitimately this next time, he has to say it was stolen again. You can't be like, well, they stole it from me last time. This one's legit. I'm going home.
Dave Rubin, thanks for joining me on Conversations with Peter Boghossian.
Pete, I'm freaking out. I'm in the wrong chair.
I know.
I've only done this once before this way.
Really?
Our mutual friend Winston Marshall was
Oh,
here.
yeah. I stayed in his basement for a month.
Is that something that can be discussed publicly?
Yeah, he's terrific. I want to see him in New York in less than a month. But thanks for letting me use the studio. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. I like this. I like the idea of I kind of questioned and queried and poked at you for a little bit, and now let's see what you got.
Okay, then let's jump right at it. I love that, by the way.
Isn't that cool?
Let's jump right into it. Are we winning the culture war? By we, I say, is critical social justice ideology falling out of favor?
I consider myself a world-weary optimist. I'm an optimist because I don't know how else I could do what I do for a living. I mean, every day I get up and I do a news show and try to tell people what I think about things. And if I didn't think things could turn around, so that's the optimist part, then I don't know how I could do it. I would just be depressing myself and depressing my audience. When my show ends every day, and we do the 11 a.m. live stream every day, I'm always happiest when the show's the funniest and it's the silliest and everything else. Even if I'm talking about very serious things, which obviously there's a ton of serious shit to talk about right now. When that 50 minutes or hour wraps, if I'm like, oh, I said these things in a funny way or in an interesting way, or there were some silly laughs or whatever amidst the chaos, to me, that's the best way I can do it. And that lends itself to this sort of world-weary optimism. I'm world-weary because the world is extremely screwed up right now. As we talked about for the previous hour, like you and I, for whatever reason, were amongst a fairly small group of people that were talking about a lot of this very early on, and we come from literally different parts of the country, different educational backgrounds and all this stuff, but somehow the internet brought this whole crew together that would include Jordan Peterson, of course, and at one time Sam Harris and Rogan and this wild group of people. And all we were all doing was like, hey guys, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
And we had different disciplines and all of those things. And we've all kind of gone our own ways, and we warned about a lot of this, but it didn't quite.
Very few people listened.
No. A lot of people listened, but because the numbers bear that out and the amount of books that were sold, and tours and everything else.
Very few people did anything.
I suppose very few people did anything or knew what to do. I guess they had the knowledge, or at least were awakened to a lot of the things that we were awakened to, but then didn't know how to stop any of this. And then, when you look at the last couple years as the universities have just completely gone mad, and that we've looked at our corporate culture go completely bananas and institute discrimination in the name of non-discrimination, DEI, and all those things. We've watched like every layer of it all get crazier. Then, of course, you have a media component to it, which we didn't do much on this when we swapped the seats. You have a media component that has lied to us about almost everything that was important for now, I would say God knows how long. We could say, okay, 10 years they've been lying to us. They lied to us about Donald Trump, very fine people on both sides. They told us the COVID vaccines worked. They said 6 feet social distancing had any scientific background, or that masks work. They said that Brett Kavanaugh was a serial rapist. They said the Covington kids were racist. They said that Jussie Smollett was going to be lynched, like just over and over and over and over. So that blew people's brains apart, because then people start seeing things online, and then suddenly you start going, wait a minute, CNN's been lying to me about all of this stuff. And the New York Times has been lying to me about this stuff. And NPR has been lying to me. There's a New York Times cover right behind you. I don't know if you remember that one. You might be included in that one. That's from about 5 years ago, front page Sunday New York Times, talking about how the YouTube algorithms were leading people to the alt-right. And it includes pictures of me and Jordan Peterson and and Ben Shapiro, of course,
Barry
and Milton Friedman and Barry White. I mean, it was just completely psychotic when we now know the algorithms have been pushing all of the leftism and not towards the right. Not to say that there aren't problems on the right. But your question basically was, am I hopeful or are we winning? I think is what you said. We're not winning. I mean, I can't tell you that we're winning. I think we have pockets of resistance that are strong. And you happen to be in a city, in a state that is, I would say, at the epicenter of everything that's going right. Miami is flourishing right now. Florida is absolutely flourishing. We have law and order. We have basic common decency. We have clean streets. We have strong education. You know, Florida used to be the joke of the country when it came to education because everyone came down here to retire and there's no income tax, right? So all these old people came down, there was no income tax, and then they were like, well, there's no money to fund the schools, and so everyone thought Florida had the worst schools. Florida, by almost every metric now, U.S. News World Report, we're basically 1 to 3 in almost every report that you see as it pertains to education. DeSantis removed all the woke stuff out, so we're not teaching any of this nonsense. You know, They've said all of the worst things about him, including don't say gay. The guy, his wife, literally, Casey DeSantis, the first lady, was literally helping our surrogates get a doctor when we got here. They're saying that you're not allowed to say gay in this town. I mean, in this state, it's completely ridiculous. So I would say I'm excited and passionate about the places where good things are happening, and I see a lot of fertile ground for good things to continue. But that's not a lot of the country. I am not hopeful for New York in any way whatsoever. I see virtually no hope. I see California, I even see less hope than that. There's some places probably in the middle of the country that have geographic barriers that'll make them sort of slide through. But the divide is getting bigger and bigger. Yeah.
What do you think as we, let me ask you a question first. Do you think the Biden runoff is a good thing? Like, are you happy that those are the best people?
No, of course not. It should not be this way. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. It doesn't even matter who you support to know that we're not supposed to be doing this with, you know, an 80-year-old guy with dementia and a 78-year-old guy who, regardless of what you think of the results of the last election, says that the election was stolen. So, you know, if he loses this next time, even if he loses legitimately this next time, he has to say it was stolen again. You can't be like, well, they stole it from me last time. This one's legit. I'm going home. So there's huge, huge problems on the horizon just because of that, right? I mean, if Biden wins, all of the issues that you and I talk about all the time and all of the woke stuff, you know, the twisted part about Biden, beyond his brain, which is actually twisted, and I think everyone knows he has cognitive decline fairly significantly. The twisted part about Biden is that they were selling Biden as the moderate, right? Because Bernie, if you remember that primary, he was running against Bernie, he was running against Elizabeth Warren. They had legitimate socialists running against him. And they are socialists, right? Like I said years ago, Bernie kept saying he was a Democrat socialist. And I kept saying, well, just in time, they will just not say Democrat anymore. And they don't really, they're socialists. Okay, fine. I appreciate that, actually.
Honestly,
like we can move
sure,
some
100%.
of the veil away from that.
Yeah.
But Biden was sold to us as we know what Joe Biden is. He was the vice president. He's been in government for 47 years. We know what his track record is, blah, blah, blah. He'll be the bulwark. Because the more moderate Democrats were concerned, obviously, about what now has burst forth out of this, you know, this progressive madness and lunacy that's taken over the party. So Biden was sold as the moderate. And ironically, or I guess it's not ironic because I didn't think that he was moderate. I thought he was going to be taken over by whatever the forces were. And the forces were clearly going in the direction of the sort of wokeness and big government and leftism and all that. It would be indistinguishable if you had the craziest leftist in office versus Joe Biden. If anything, it would be a breath of fresh air because then it would be a little more honest.
Conspicuous.
Honest, it would be a little, we could define it a little bit more, or let's say the average person who maybe is a little confused about what's going on here, rightfully so, because the media is so bad, would at least be able to identify it a little bit more. And then on the Trump side, it's like there are so many problems in this country. And even though I think Trump on all of the big issues, from the border to economics to foreign policy, would be significantly better than Biden, without question. And there's evidence of that. I mean, the economy was doing great before COVID. So there's evidence of that. There's certainly evidence he would do more on the border, 100%, right? And as far as foreign policy, I mean, we had 7 peace deals signed in the Middle East under him. So there's an awful lot of evidence. I don't think Putin would have gone into Ukraine.
Oh, well,
so if you just take those things, yes, things would get better under Trump, I believe. However, the left is now so radical and so out of control and has made it so clear that no law matters and no norm should be upheld that they will relentlessly burn down the country if he's president. I don't even think that's a question. And then he will have to respond. And then what? Then do we have civil war? Do we have, it's like we don't want to think about, you don't want to go too far thinking about these things because you don't want to speak them into existence. But we are in an extremely precarious place. But I did have RFK in this seat about a week and a half ago, and I thought he was a total breath of fresh air, but he's an independent and we are in a two-party system and he's got to get all the ballot access. And that's the Hail Mary of Hail Marys. It would be better. Even though he's more left than I am, he's probably more in line with some of your views on things that I disagree with, and it simply doesn't matter that we disagree.
Yeah, what do you think some of the problems with the Republican Party are? What among Republicans? Like, what are their shortcomings or problems, or what are their blind spots?
Well, I can give you one obvious one right now.
Sure.
Is that for literally 5 decades, I mean, since before I was born in 1976, Roe v. Wade got put in 1973. Roe v. Wade, even though I consider myself begrudgingly pro-choice, I think you could probably say around 12 to 15 weeks would be fair, but I would leave it to the states, which Roe v. Wade obviously did not make abortion legal. It made it federally legal. The reversal of Roe v. Wade is what almost everyone on the right has wanted for 5 decades, for literally 51 years now. They got it, meaning that it didn't make abortion illegal. It just got kicked back to the states, and the states can do whatever they want. In Florida, we have 6 weeks. To me, that's too much, but I have to now decide as a Floridian, do I put abortion at the top of the hierarchy of importance, or is the no income tax higher than that? Is the law and order higher than that? And everyone can make their decision. And someone that thinks that if you want 18-week abortion and Florida has 6 and you say, all right, I can't live there. Well, you can go to Cali. Now you're going to get taxed to high hell and there's going to be drugs on the streets. Everyone makes their decisions. To directly answer your question, They got what they wanted. They got the reversal of Roe v. Wade, which I believe was the right. There's no constitutionally guaranteed right to abortion. So kicking it back to the states was the right thing. But if you've been paying attention to what the right's doing over the last couple of weeks, there's been this mass move to push Trump to push for, if he was to become president, a federal abortion ban, meaning just pick whatever the number of weeks is and that there would be a federal ban. It's like, guys, you got a win. Take a win that's in line with federalism, that's in line with the Constitution. I know it's not what you may want in your most sort of private religious thoughts or anything else, but take a win. Abortion is not a winning issue for Republicans. That's just reality. So you can have whatever thoughts you want, but if you never win elections, and in large part, why the Republicans did not get the red wave that everybody thought they were going to get was because the Democrats are very good at right before the election, they start screaming about abortions. So all of these women who now are waking up, an awful lot of middle-class women are waking up. They don't want their kids to have their genitals chopped off. They're upset about the border. They're seeing all this weird racial stuff. They are waking up. Everyone knows something's not right with Biden. They're ready to move. But then the Democrats scream abortion, and then an awful lot of women put that in that, the height of that triangle. So I think that's one problem Republicans have. I think there's another problem, I would say, brewing in sort of like, is Trump really the future of all of this? Or is there something that maybe is a little more, I don't even want to say a return to anything, because it's not like you'd be returning to anything great, but is the energy thing that Trump has created, is that what you want to be the future of conservatism is, let's say? Or could it be what I would say the reason I supported Ron DeSantis was that's what I want. I want competency and someone who tells the truth and does what they're going to say they're going to do and is results-based and not drama-based and everything else. I would say Republicans have to figure out which way they want to go with that. I suspect they will not want to go the way that I want to go. So those are just two. I could probably find a whole bunch more.
What is the one policy position that you have that you're most certain is true?
Well, I mean,
you can give me three or four.
I could probably give you a couple. I mean, one now, I'll give you one like very concrete one that I can give you the proof is in the pudding kind of thing. I lived in California before this. I'm obviously doing well. I've sold businesses and built things and built this show and have employees and everything else. I'm in the highest federal tax bracket.
Over 2 million YouTube subscribers.
We've got a lot of YouTube subscribers.
The Rubin Report.
It was, and you knew me when I had 10 subscribers, and here we are. but I'm in the highest federal tax bracket, so I pay 37% federal taxes. And then I was in California where I was in the highest tax bracket there, paying another, whatever it was, 12%. That's basically 50% of my money just going to the government. I did not move, as you know, to Florida because of taxes. I moved because of COVID and the urban blight and the fact that I felt that, I mean, I had the most gorgeous house.
I know.
I mean, my house here is nice, but that house was the most, they could have buried me in the backyard there. You couldn't believe it. I saw you that morning after the party.
I was telling you, like, why on earth this place is paradise.
But so think about it. And I only lived there for a year. I thought we were going to live there the rest of our lives. I thought we were going to raise our kids there. But I could not live in a place that was so incongruent with the rest of my beliefs. So I moved here to Florida, and now there's no income tax. And guess what? We've got roads. We've got schools. We have better social services.
From sales taxes.
Well, our sales taxes are comparable. All our taxes are basically comparable. It's because we don't have an endless spending machine on nonsensical things. Florida, it's just a one-party state, endless grift of taking taxpayer money, putting it in projects that don't do anything. They've been trying to build a railway from L.A. to wine country, basically, or San Francisco forever. They've spent billions of dollars. I don't think any track is laid. Florida 5 years ago was like, we're going to build a Bright Line. We're going to build a train. It's going to send people from Miami up to Orlando. And a couple years later, it's going to get them to Tampa, and then we're going to get them down to like Fort Myers area, and then it'll come back across. Like they're going to bisect the entire state. Well, they've already done it in 5 years. They didn't. It's not finished yet, but we can already go up to Orlando, and they're working on the Tampa thing now.
So what is it that enabled? Go ahead. Sorry.
No. So it's about doing things functionally. So to me, when I now see them, when I have friends that visit me from New York and from Connecticut and some of these places where they're paying all of these taxes, they're getting nothing back, they're seeing more crime, they're seeing more drugs, the good people are fleeing. I mean, that's the other problem, is that New York lost about 500,000 people since COVID.
That's right.
You know that Lee Zeldin, who nobody knew, he was a little Long Island congressman before he ran for governor as a Republican against Kathy Hochul. Nobody knew who he was until 2 weeks before the election. Then he kind of got hot, and people were like, oh, there's a chance here. He ended up losing by about 450,000 votes. Now, 500,000 people fled. It's not that every single one of them would have voted Republican, and obviously some of them are underage or whatever else. But a huge percentage of them would have, right? So it was New York even was getting to a chance where maybe there was going to be a change. But now, because of the mass migration that we've seen across the country, 1 million people leaving Cali, mostly coming here or going to Texas or Tennessee. The red are getting redder, and the blue are getting bluer. I see no way that can stop at this point. I don't have a problem with it. It's exactly what federalism.
The big sort. Yeah.
It's a sorting of, do you want to live in places that are, I said congruent before, I'll come up with a better word or a different word. Do you want to live in places that allow you to flourish as much as humanly possible? And some people do, and some people either don't or are afraid to, or obviously other people have all sorts of reasons.
So I have two questions. Why is it that it's the same educational system, it's the same country, it's the same language, same culture, we watch the same shows. Why are the people of Florida able to build a rail, but the people of California are not? Well,
there's a couple things there. I mean, first off, we are one country, but the beauty of the federalist system that the founders intended was that we would have this constant laboratory of democracy, right? So as I said before, like if you just believe that taxes are important, then you can go to, we have 37 some odd states that have income tax. And then your hope is that they will distribute that money properly. And in most cases, they just absolutely do not. If you want legalized marijuana. So for example, we don't have recreational legalized marijuana. It's going to be on the ballot in November here. I have a medicinal card. I am not I don't think I need it really for medicine. I have got a little knee pain every now and again. But interestingly, I don't think I've talked about this publicly before, I'm not really for the recreational legalization of weed. This is something I've shifted on a little bit, because every state that has legally done it seemingly has gotten worse. Show me a city.
What do you mean by worse? By what outcome measurement?
If you go to New York City right now, every street corner smells like weed.
I
And
can-
then with
I can affirm that.
with that
Yeah.
comes some other stuff. So I'm not against marijuana. I'm not against what you do.
What do you mean? What do you mean comes other stuff? You mean
Comes
other drugs?
it starts
or other...
becoming some other drugs. Like there's just kind of kids stoned around a little bit more. I don't think that there's a perfect answer for this one, by the way, because I'm definitely more libertarian and live and let live, and what you do in your house is up to you. And by the way, alcohol is way more detrimental to health
for sure
than marijuana. Nobody smokes a joint and then goes robs a bank or punches anybody. It's just not a thing. But you get drunk and you kill people.
Yeah,
there's some crazy stat on the amount of, I'm going to slightly butcher it, but it's something like 90% of murders are by people who have been drinking. So it's something really crazy, domestic murder, something like that. But this has been an interesting one for me because now I live in a place where things are working. You can get the license if you want the license, and it's somewhat controlled. I don't love government control over all of these things, but I just know, I think it's just obvious. If you look at Los Angeles, look at California, or look at New York, look at your former city of Portland, look at Seattle, all of these places that did this, they all got worse. So unless those things are just wildly disconnected and it's a total coincidence, and I don't think it is, then I think you've got to figure out how to manage these things properly. It's a tough one for me because I believe in civil liberties and you should do whatever you want with your body as an adult.
Yeah, I don't think the alternative of making pot illegal has worked. In my lifetime,
I'm not for making it illegal, but I think I don't have a major problem with either the license,
right?
The license, and then some level of control as it relates to the stores or something like that.
Yeah. All right. So
it's not I haven't fleshed this one out perfectly.
We've been here. I don't know how long we've been here. Read like a week or so. I've seen one homeless person in a week.
We're working on that guy.
Yeah. So explain to me, please, in plain language. You know that thing, explain it like I'm 5. Explain it like I'm 5. Where are all the homeless people here?
Well, first off, we have very, very few homeless people.
Okay,
actually,
so tell me why.
So there's a couple reasons. I'll tell you a quick funny story about that. On my show one day, I was doing my live stream and I was talking about, I had just come back from San Francisco, where it's obviously completely out of control. San Francisco, I think, has about 40,000 homeless people. Los Angeles has 70, but the thing is, Los Angeles is much bigger than San Francisco. So in San Francisco, you really feel it because they are concentrated and centralized. LA is obviously massive and sprawling, so you feel it there too. But in San Francisco, it's like you're in a zombie apocalypse when you walk down Market Street. Truly, I mean, people with blood dripping down their face, bodies on the floor, all of that. You've probably seen some of the videos that I've posted, and many.
Yeah, and I've been there.
Yeah, and many people have posted those things. Right. So one day I was doing my show, and I was talking about the amount of homelessness in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and I said, I don't know how many homeless people there are in Miami, but I never see them. And literally a moment later on my live stream, my phone lights up, and it's the mayor of Miami, Suarez. And he says, Dave, I'm watching your stream right now. We've got 480 homeless people, and I'm working on it.
Unbelievable.
And I was like, wow. That is the city that I want to live in.
This is the issue then that I want to talk to you about. Because this is really bothering me. This is a voting issue. I think when our friend Schellenberger ran in California, this was the top 3 issue consistently among voters. If you look at national polls, this is an issue among people who live on the coast. So, and I'm just throwing this out there. Is the reason that there are only hundreds of homeless people in Miami, and as far as I know, probably the similar fewer in Jacksonville and Naples, et cetera. Is the reason for that because they're in blue cities, because they can have open air, like Schellenberger says, open air drug? Okay.
No, there's a couple things. First off, homeless people would love to be down in Florida more than New York, just weather-wise. So there is some sorting as it relates to, so if you're wise enough and not drugged enough, and you can figure out a way to get to a place that is going to give you more resources. Yes, there's some sorting that way. I don't know what the empirical...
That's a reason that there would be more homeless in Florida because the weather's
No, the weather would push them here. But then if they realized there were no resources here, then you would be inclined to go to places where resources are.
Okay.
Right?
So go ahead.
No. So the sorting kind of goes both ways, right? There's reasons to be here literally just because of weather. You're not going to freeze your ass off in December. You're not going to die on the street. There might be reasons that you'd say, I'm going to New York or San Francisco because there are more soup kitchens, there are more shelters, they're going to put us in hotels, whatever. The answer to your question, though, is that the reason we have less homeless people here is several fronts. I mean,
Ye-
one, it's because we've created the economic conditions that don't lead to homelessness.
Like what?
We have low taxes and low regulation that invites more business to come here.
And
The more business that comes here, the more people that have jobs. The more people that have jobs, the less people that are destitute and on the streets. Then we have law and order. So businesses can thrive here. So we don't have businesses constantly going out of business. I mean, I would welcome you when you leave here before you head to the airport. Drive around this neighborhood, look at all our strip malls. There are no for sale signs. There are no empty stores. You're going to see cars and parking lots packed everywhere because the conditions have been created so that businesses can flourish. And then people go out to restaurants more. And you could just compare that to say, all right, here's the best example I can give you, Oakland.
Okay.
Everything is closing in Oakland. You know that they closed In-N-Out in Oakland? In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah.
It's the first time an In-N-Out's ever closed because they cannot,
So there's a lot there. I just want to linger on this and make sure that I understand the argument correctly. So if what you're saying is correct, that would mean that the 400 or so homeless people who are in the city of Miami are from Miami, and that in other areas like San Francisco or Seattle, those people are transplants who have moved there. Is that?
I mean, I don't know that empirically in that we have so few here. So I can't,
No, like,
I
is
can't
that
tell
an
you.
inference that one could make?
I think you could probably make some inference as it relates to that, but also it's not just the economic conditions. It's also that when you have a place of roughly law and order, people are happy and more functional, and they're not as dependent on drugs, and they don't become alcoholics. And all of these other things, those are the things that lead to homelessness. They're not as psychologically beaten up and everything else. You know, I don't know what the numbers are, but if you were to, the average homeless person has a series of psychological conditions, drug use and everything else. So if you remove a lot of the toxicity that leads to someone being really just a banged up human being, that then the most unthinkable thing could happen, short of being murdered, that you end up just living on the street.
Okay, so that's a different
If
lens.
you remove those conditions, people can flourish.
Yeah, so that's a different lens than the one that I was using. And so I was thinking to myself, why haven't any of the presidential candidates made this one of their top issues? In fact, I haven't even heard, I mean, maybe you have. Have you heard Biden or Trump or anybody talk about this? I haven't heard anybody talk about it. And I'm wondering if, and you tell me what you think about this, I could be completely wrong about this. The reason they're not talking about homelessness is because they know that homelessness has to have a federal solution, because if you leave it over to the states, Shermer was telling me that in San Francisco, they increased the homeless budget of services by double, and more than twice as many people came to the city.
Right.
So people, like you said before, they're seeking out those services. But the reason it's a losing battle, it is a battle they cannot win, because it would cost, I don't even have any idea how much it would cost. So why aren't they talking about it?
Well, there's a couple reasons. The Democrats can't talk about it because it's almost all of their policies that have led to this. See, there's a very famous video, maybe your guys could throw some B-roll in as we're doing this, of Gavin Newsom when he was the mayor of San Francisco, which he ruined San Francisco. San Francisco is one of the most beautiful cities in the United States before him, laying out his 10-year plan to end homelessness. That was about 20 years ago.
And what was that plan?
Well, it was basically just throwing money at things. We're going to put more mental health, money in mental health. I mean, the idea that the state of California is going to solve anyone's mental health is completely bananas, right? Like that person should have their head examined. But they believe that pouring money into everything is the solution. And it's not. I don't even know that they even believe it. I don't know that Gavin Newsom really believes that. I think Gavin Newsom believes the more money he can take from people, he can figure out ways to make himself and his friends richer. Much like the fact that he didn't close Plump Jack Winery. His winery somehow managed to stay open during COVID, but he closed almost all the other wineries, or French Laundry or anything else.
So you believe, and don't let me put words in your mouth, let me make sure I get this right. So you believe if we create certain conditions, primarily economic conditions, but secondarily social conditions in the society, one of the consequences of that is we will ameliorate homelessness. So there'll be fewer homeless people, because homelessness itself is, while there are psychological comorbidities, homelessness itself is causal to the economic and social system in which one emerges.
Yes, 100%. There's every bit of evidence of that, because go to places that have, again, basic law and order.
Okay.
lower taxes,
So
go to
if
places that
that's-
businesses can thrive, and you will not see a lot of homeless people
Okay,
around there.
so if that's true,
Yeah.
then if the city of San Francisco adopted those policies that led to that, one ought to see a commensurate decrease in homelessness.
Yes, the problem with San Francisco is that it's seriously deep in these problems right
See,
now. Now,
that's-
first off,
yeah, I was
well, there's a
thinking
couple
about
things.
How to test that? That's what I was thinking.
Right. Well, first off, when they want to deal with homeless people, they can't. Remember, President Xi, president of China, came to San
That's right, I
Francisco.
remember
The
that.
homeless people
Yeah,
all
they
disappeared for 3 days. Where the hell did he put them?
Yeah, where did they put them?
No, nobody seems to know. And then, by the way, then he left, and all
They
the
came
homeless
back
people came
again.
back. I was in the Twitter offices with Elon Musk in a corner office, up on that. I think it's on Market Street. It's, we're right in the center of the city. And we're having a meeting, and then he literally just stops the meeting, corner office, so windows, facing both ways of the city. And he's like, I want to show you something. I want to show you something. Look over here. And he points out there's this like gang of homeless people, but it literally looks like a zombie movie. It looks like I Am Legend. And he's like, that's where they get the drugs. And he's like, wait a few minutes and watch. And then you start seeing them all move like a mob. They move, and he's like, that's where they do the drugs, blah, blah, blah. And then you can watch that. A few minutes later, we watch them all kind of do the drugs. And then he goes, and then they all wander over there. And then it's that main street over there. And that's where they're doing the fentanyl, whatever hangover thing. Or whatever.
Fentanyl.
Right. So the point is, the whole San Francisco has another problem because so many people have left. There aren't enough good people to fix it anymore. New York, I think, has maybe not that level of a problem. But if someone was to come in now, think about New York City. New York City, when I was growing up, my grandparents and great-grandparents lived there. I lived in the suburbs. We used to go to New York City, and under Ed Koch, who was a Democrat, but he was a moderate Democrat. It was pretty good till right at the end of him. Then they had 4 years of David Dinkins. He was a far left Democrat. And that's when the city went to crap. That's when there was drugs and prostitution everywhere. You'd come in from the Midtown Tunnel. They'd have homeless people washing your windows with newspapers.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then who came in? Rudy Giuliani came in, and immediately, the first thing that he did, this is not a joke, the first thing that he did was he removed the guys that were literally washing windows with newspapers, because he said, we can't have people coming in from the suburbs to go to Broadway or be tourists here, and the first thing they get accosted by is homeless people attacking them, basically. He did that. He jailed a lot of people. He started making petty theft crime again because they had decriminalized a lot of stuff. He was the one that ironically Disneyfied Times Square. It was basically a sex dungeon and a drug dungeon. And he brought in Disney and all these corporations to now you go to Times Square. Well, the crime is back now because they've had Democrat mayors, but you go to Times Square and it's Disney, basically. It's just Disney billboards everywhere. We had great run under him, whatever it was, 12 years under him. Then we had Mike Bloomberg, who was a Democrat, but was a moderate and basically replicated almost all of his policies. So we had a great run under him. So New York had a 20-year run, in effect. That was phenomenal. Those were the years that I lived there. I never once feared for my life, for crime or anything else. And I was out and about doing stand-up 3 a.m., wandering the Lower East Side. Never once had any issues. Then they bring in Bill de Blasio.
I just did an event with him.
Oh, you told me you saw him the other day.
Yeah.
And then they bring in Bill de Blasio, and he is a communist. I think he's a self-avowed communist, and he destroyed New York City. And then what they did was then they elected this guy, Eric Adams, who people thought, okay, he won't be as crazy. And it's like, all right, maybe he's not completely as insane, but he's made it a sanctuary city. He's doing all of the wrong things. And the point of all of that, and it relates to what I said before about Lee Zeldin, is the sorting has happened. So there aren't enough good people. All the people who produce, who then put money into the system through taxes, they're all coming down here. The NYPD, DeSantis offered $5,000 bonuses to get the best NYPD, who are not getting backed by their administration. So now we're getting the best police officers. I know several NYPD vets that have retired early, because who wants to deal with it? Who wants to go into a situation where the administration's not going to back you. You're going to be called racist. You're going to allow illegal migrants to punch you in the face and then be out on the street the next day. So the sorting has made it so that there aren't enough good people in many of those places now to turn things around.
But you love it here. You're thriving here.
Because it's all working. There's
a living advertisement for it, even though you're not a typical Florida man. When I think Florida man,
I think you know, it's funny. I think I've become a typical Florida man. I love America. I love freedom.
Yeah.
I love law and order. I love flourishing communities. I want to do everything I can to continue that. When I walk around my neighborhood, there's no trash around here, but if I do see a cup on the ground, I pick it up. I say hi to my neighbors.
I always do that, by the way.
Everyone's friendly here. And again, those are the conditions that then people do less drugs. There tends to be less crime. There is less psychological confusion. You know, you could even connect some of the psychological stuff, which what ultimately leads to homelessness and drug use and everything else. If you teach a bunch of kids that the country that they live in is systemically racist and was founded on racism, and actually their genitals are the reverse gender's genitals, and all of the crazy things that they're being taught, you think you might start, and then you put them online, and they're doing God knows what on this thing, and it's fueled by crazy algorithms and everything else.
Yeah.
You think you might be setting up a society for disaster, or you can move to a place where they're going to learn a true assessment of history. They're going to learn that you can't just break into Lululemon and take as many pants as you want. Or in LA, you're allowed to steal up to $900 worth of stuff. So you could walk into Best Buy, steal a PlayStation 5 and take 4 games. But if you take that 5th game, you just cross that $900 threshold. Now you're in trouble, but you're not in trouble with that either. All of those things lead to a society that cannot function over time, because if you're just going to punish the good people, if you say, as they do now in New York City, you're allowed to jump the turnstile, they will not arrest you for it. They will not fine you for it. Are you jumping the turnstile these days?
No, I was looking to read because I was just flabbergasted by how many people I saw jump the turnstile.
Yeah, jumped it.
I was shocked. And then I told Andrew Doyle, like, I've never been in London for 2 months. I've never seen a single person jump the turnstile. He said, I've been here 40 some odd years. I've never seen anybody jump the turnstile.
By the way, nobody.
And the cops were right there in New York City when these guys.
Well, they're told not to do anything about it. So think about what you're doing psychologically to the average person that lives there. Then you're saying, okay, if you would like to break the law, you got no problem. I'm not worried about the criminals breaking the law. Criminals break the law, or the kid that just taking advantage of the system. That's one thing. Yeah. But you're saying to every other person that is buying the card and putting it into the slot to get through the turnstile, you're a sucker. You are a sucker, because not only are you paying to get on the subway, you're paying for that guy to do it, and that guy to do it, and that guy to do it. And again, that creates resentment between people. That then starts creating racial tension when people start looking and going, boy, it's that type of person who is jumping the turnstile. Like, so again, all of the conditions, if you just want conditions for craziness, go to big blue cities. And if you don't.
Yeah, it's interesting. Travis, a guy who's on my team, we were in, I always mix up new seasons of Whole Foods. I can't remember which one it is, but we're in one of those, and a homeless guy is walking out with a bag of groceries. And I said to the guy at the deli, like, this dude's just walking out, like, what are you going to, he said, nothing. He said, don't tell anybody this, which of course I'm telling you, don't tell anybody this, but we're not allowed to stop people who walk out with groceries. So I said, well, what's preventing me from walking out with groceries? He said, absolutely nothing. So I'm like, oh, okay. So then I went to the bathroom and I came back, and another guy was walking out with groceries. Oh, let me tell you a quick story. This is a great story. So my son, I will not say his name. My son, who
I know his name.
You know him well.
Okay.
He was visiting me when I was in Portland, and I told him about 50% of the time I go into the Safeway, but half the time, and I only go in the evening, somebody steals a grocery. Like literally it's 50% of the time. Or the bathrooms are always closed. There's a heroin overdose, or there's a murder in there, or whatever. Okay, so we walk in. This is a totally true story. So we walk in, and literally not 30 seconds that we're in, somebody, the name of that book is Social Justice.
There you go.
So Social Justice Fallacy. Yeah. I could talk to you about that.
The great Thomas Sowell, white supremacist.
Right. That's a great book. Yeah. Okay. So and then we're laughing to each other. Someone walk, stole groceries. So then we go to the self-checkout. We hear this commotion, and it turns out to be quite a commotion. And we looked, and the manager, because I stopped there all the time, the manager comes over and he knows me. And I said, what happened? He said, well, another person, he said, this person stole groceries, and the security guard yelled stop to her. And then her boyfriend came in and started screaming at the security guard because he yelled at his girlfriend. So that's the situation in which we find ourselves, in a kind of that show Sliders, that sci-fi show, like you've slid into crazy land, like where everybody's crazy. Homeless people walk, like you said, it's not sustainable. They walk out of the yuppie grocery store, nothing happens. Another person walks out, nothing happens. Boyfriends come back into the store and yell at security guards when their girlfriends steal things, and they tell them stuff.
Right. And then think about it. It hits at every level, because then the business itself is like, boy, we used to charge this amount for this, but now we know we have X amount of theft.
Well, I don't understand.
We have to pay more to get better security guards.
Okay, if you know that you can walk into a whatever Whole Foods or New Season, like if you know that you can walk in and walk out with groceries, there is literally nothing stopping you from doing that every single day.
Well, I'll tell you another layer of why it doesn't happen in Florida.
Because you'll be arrested?
Guns.
Oh.
They know not only do the police have guns here, but many of us have guns. I have multiple guns in this house. If you were to walk into if you were to walk into Lululemon here and take a bunch of shit off the shelves, it's not that the security guard is going to shoot you necessarily, but someone, when you run out of that store in the mall, someone else might well shoot you. We had an event. There was about 3 weeks ago where there were a couple of illegals that were rounded up here, because we round up illegals here. And then there was this whole thing with squatting, this whole situation with squatters' rights.
Crazy.
Squatters' rights. It's the most insane statement ever. Squatters' rights. If I go into your house and just take over your house, I have rights. I mean, it's bananas. So DeSantis immediately does a whole bunch of laws he strengthens the laws around squatters' rights, in that there are no squatters' rights. But then one of our sheriffs, I think it was either Tampa or Sarasota, they arrest some illegals, and then he does a press conference with the guy being handcuffed behind him. And he's like, one of the reporters was like, so what are you going to do? What do you think about squatters' rights? And the guy's like, well, the sheriff goes, well, there's no such thing as squatters' rights. And as a matter of fact, if you go ahead and shoot somebody who breaks into your house, you'd be doing us a favor. Think about that's true, right? The police don't want to have to police everything. If you have a right, if someone breaks into your house, to shoot them, you have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and to defend your property. But think of the mentality that the sheriff was willing to say that,
right,
and what that sends across
the message,
the universe of Florida.
Okay.
Don't F with Florida.
Okay, so I need your help. I'm asking you this
with the real estate agent. I can get
no. I'm ready to move. No, I don't think I'm going to be living in this country. I'm not going to retire here unless there's a dramatic turnaround. I'm going to keep fighting for the country, but I'm out. So I need your help figuring something out. If we just wrote down just the discrete propositions of the things you've argued, squatters' rights, there are no squatters' rights. We need to create conditions to whatever the substance
low
of the
taxes,
conversation.
strong border,
we write these
sane
things
education.
down.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a way to evacuate moral and ideological lenses from viewing that? Like, is there just a way to look at those things and say, listen, this is not a conservative issue. This is not a liberal issue. This is not a Republican issue. Now, it may be the case that many Republicans advocate for this, but not all Republicans advocate. Not all liberals, not all conservatives are opposed to this. Like, I think that
yes,
please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the way to move society off of craziness is to frame these issues in non-partisan ways. Like, there is just the Cass report, the W path. Like, there is just no good evidence for and evidence against, you don't have to say the word mutilating, but, puberty blockers. Like, this is not an ideological issue. This is what the evidence is.
Well, I would say, in effect, on almost every issue that you would say is like a fairly cut and dry right and wrong issue that we all would have agreed on 20 years ago, we're doing it right here in Florida. Now, Florida happens to be governed by a Republican and have a supermajority of Republicans, so I can't completely disconnect that from that the Republican Party of Florida is significantly different than the now destroyed Democrat Party of Florida. So there's no way to, I suppose, fully separate it from politics, but all of the issues that DeSantis has run on and all of the things that he's accomplished here, trust me, I meet, even in my own neighborhood here, I'm just one of many, new Floridians here. And most of the people I meet are former Democrats who are the most hardcore Republicans now. But it's not, you're right. It's not that they're Republicans in the way we would have thought of Democrats versus Republicans. They love freedom. COVID broke a lot of brains and also woke an awful lot of people up. So it's why I always say I'm not a Republican. I mean, I would be the least likely Republican in the history of the world, but I am a Florida Republican because I know what that means. It means you believe in law and order. It means you believe that this country is fundamentally good, that you have value as an individual, and you want to live in a place that has created the conditions for you to live the life that you want to live. I can't say that about the National Republican Party at all. It's a complete mess. But I don't know that you can totally extricate those things. One party is doing them much better, or one side of the aisle. But by the way, I would say that for someone like you, who I think considers yourself a classical liberal, and for a guy like me that wrote a book defending classical liberalism, and I really was the person, I think, that brought that phrase even back into the American lexicon in some ways and got all the hate for that. If you are a classical liberal, you believe in individual rights, laissez-faire economics, you want people to live as they wish, you don't really care what they do in the privacy of their own home. In essence, you are what I would say is sort of like a modern conservative. And that's tough. That's a tough pill for a lot of liberals to swallow.
And you've said before what it means to be a liberal. I can't remember the phrase, but it's really excellent how you phrase it. Is to be a conservative, to reaffirm my liberal principles. What was it?
Yeah, being oh God, this is one of Dave Rubin's greatest hits. I'm usually sitting in that chair. Defending my liberal values is now a conservative position.
I think that's largely correct.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen a swap out in positions in my lifetime. So let me.
Can I give you a really good example of that? So Florida, before DeSantis switched the abortion bill here to 6 weeks, or the abortion limit to 6 weeks, which is the heartbeat bill, Florida had 15-week abortion. I think that is as much of a compromise as you can possibly have in a society that people have different religions and different philosophies and come from different places and everything else. I went to every Republican event over the last 2.5 years in Florida, every big Republican event. I never heard anyone complaining about it. Now, did almost every Republican probably want it to be shifted closer to 6 weeks? Yes. But the reason that defending my liberal values has become a conservative position is that conservatives were the ones that were willing to be okay with differences on the margins, where liberals unfortunately stopped doing that. So while most conservatives had their own private beliefs that either were no abortion period or the heartbeat bill at 6 weeks or only for really extenuating circumstances with the health of the mother or something, basically nobody was complaining about the 15-week thing. They were willing to make a concession. Now, interestingly, I think DeSantis, he did what he thought, what he personally believes in as a Catholic. I think he did pay a certain price in the presidential run for it. I think it made too many women be suspect of him or whatever. It wasn't a winner for him in that front. But I don't think he regrets it. I think he did what he thought was right, and the voters will ultimately decide if they agree with that. But the broader point was that it's the conservative places that are doing the proper liberal things. 15-week abortion, that was the liberal position of 20 years ago. And you take, or 30 years ago, 1988, every sane liberal would have said, it's 12 to 16 weeks, something like that. And now the liberals, quote unquote liberals, who are progressive, so they're illiberal actually, they want 8-month abortions. That is the most illiberal position you could possibly take.
Yeah, when we go around the world, the country, I'll say, what is your position on abortion? The first trimester, the second trimester, the third trimester, and up to the last day. And I've even asked questions, what is your position on abortion after the
post-birth abortion? It used to be known as murder.
And it's interesting to see the responses. All right, we're coming up against a hard stop, but I want to ask you a few things before we go.
I will try to.
Predictions for the election.
I mean, I hate to say it, but my gut feeling is Biden or some vestige or Frankenstein something of the Democrats will win.
You're kidding me.
Not because
I'm almost shocked.
That's not what I want. If you ask me what I want,
what do you think, Biden?
No,
really?
I think that we somehow know something close to the cap of what Trump can do. No matter how many people seem to wake up, we still have this problem with people who are waking up and just won't vote for Trump. So there can be The Rock now is like, I regret voting for Biden, but he hasn't said he's voting for Trump. Joe Rogan, the most influential podcaster worth probably $200 million, still has not said he would vote for Trump. He didn't even vote last time. So there's this issue around Trump that, yes, it does feel a little more counterculture and maybe cooler to support him, but people aren't getting all the way there. The other guy that we mentioned when we swapped seats, Coleman Hughes, was on The View crushing the woke left and right in the most beautifully eloquent way you could possibly do it. And then basically said, I'm not going to vote for Trump. So in essence, what do you mean? You're going to vote for the same person that all of the wokesters are going to vote for? So I think there's a huge disconnect between the online world and the mainstream world, and it's hard to gauge how much power the mainstream world still has. But I think it would be a fool's mission to think, oh, the polls look good for Trump, the energy seems like it's with Trump. It's like that's what everyone thought last time too. Remember, Trump, despite COVID, was having big rallies. Biden was in a basement and or with 6 people in giant circles 18 feet away from each other. And he still won, if we're to believe that any of this is legit or anything else.
We're coming up against a hard stop, but what's your favorite restaurant here in Miami?
I don't know that I want to tell you on camera because then it'll be overrun by people, but I'll tell you off camera.
Okay, fair enough.
How about that?
And we're going to plan to come back here pretty soon. And so I think we should go there to celebrate.
Oh, yeah. We went to a pretty good restaurant the other day.
It was great.
That one was fairly new.
A little
for me.
pricey. Thank you for picking up those drinks. I appreciate that.
There's no income tax here. It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
I'm writing it off.
I have to say,
off what I have no idea.
Absolutely delighted by the success of the channel and the fact that you're happy here and your family and your kids. I'm just so happy for you, Dave. So congratulations.
Likewise, Pete.
Couldn't happen to a better man.
I guess we'll do this one more time. What do you think?
I hope so. Thanks, Dave. Thank you for watching. Everything we do is under the umbrella of the National Progress Alliance, nationalprogressalliance.org. It's a nonprofit, independent 501c3. Your generous donations keep us going and keep fueling content like this. So please help us out. Make a donation. We very much appreciate it. Thank you.